Hi everybody, this is Michelle from Virtual Hand Care, your online hand expert. In this video, I'm going to answer a question that I commonly get with people that have experienced a broken wrist or a wrist fracture. And that question is, why are my fingers curled after a broken wrist? It is often a concern for many people because it can prevent them from really using their hand and using their fingers. So in this video, I thought I would give you a few reasons as to why that does happen. So one of the most common fractures in the wrist is a distal radius fracture. That is breaking this bone in the wrist. So basically that's this bone right here. So all of the tendons that help with us being able to curl our fingers as well as being able to straighten our fingers, they cross over that wrist. They cross at that fracture site. They cross in the front and then they also cross in the back. Now, what happens though is that if you're in a cast for a while, because you had surgery or maybe you didn't have surgery, but you still had to wear a cast for a while. Well, what happens is as that bone heals, then your tendons that cross over that area can get very tight because they cross right at that area where the fracture is. But also you're not usually moving those tendons very much either through that space. If you have a surgery, those tendons are kind of like sandwiched. You've got your scar on the outside, which is healing, and then you've got the tendons that run through that fracture site, and then you've got the bone that is trying to heal. So those tendons are kind of, sandwiched in there, and they don't get a lot of movement in the fingers, which can make them very tight. And as things heal, they kind of contract down a little bit. And so then you may notice that you have a hard time trying to straighten the fingers. So because of the swelling and because of the scar tissue and the bone healing, it has a tendency to kind of curl those fingers down. Now, another reason why that happens is because of swelling. So it's very, very common after any kind of injury, after any kind of broken bone, to have a lot of swelling. Well, when you have a broken wrist, the fingers get very, very swollen. And what happens when you have very swollen fingers? The fluid finds spaces to go to, right? So on the back of our fingers, we have wrinkles, and wrinkles are good because that's part of the reason why we can actually curl our fingers down, is because we have nice loose skin as well as wrinkles on the back of the fingers. Well, when we get a lot of swelling, those wrinkles go away, things get really tight, that skin gets really tight. And when you think of having swelling on the top of the fingers, what's it gonna do when it's kind of sitting back there? It's gonna actually posture and kind of push the fingers forward. That's just our kind of resting posture anyway. And over time of the swelling sitting there and our fingers curled like this, well, the ligaments, the small little ligaments that are on the sides of our joints get very stiff and very tight very, very quickly. And it just takes a few days for that to really start happening. And you start going into weeks of healing and weeks of the fingers being swollen and curled. Well, then that's a recipe for having curled fingers after your broken wrist. Now, another reason why I find that this happens is because even though you may be moving your hand and your doctor told you to be pumping the fingers or wiggling the fingers, what I usually find is that most people really we're working on a lot of flexion, right? Like we're always trying to work on bending those fingers. So when we are wiggling in the cast or we're bending in the cast, we're never really going into full straightening of those fingers. So for 4, 5, 6 weeks, you're doing a lot of this and you're not doing a lot of full extension or going through that full range of motion. So that can make your joints really, really stiff if they're not going straight for that whole entire time that you are healing and that you are in your cast. And so then the other reason why you might have curled fingers after a broken wrist is because the resting posture of our fingers is just in a bent position, right? So what I often will see people that have a broken wrist, they're very protective of their wrist, which is very, very understandable because you broke your wrist. You don't want anything to happen to it. So you have a tendency to just kind of curl the fingers and not really move those fingers. And so then the resting position that they're in a lot is this kind of bent, curled position. So they're in this position more than they are in a kind of a straightening position. So that does kind of piggyback onto my last reason as to why, is because you don't go through that full motion. So you're not doing the exercises, but you may also just be constantly having the hand curled, all the time. So that's why it is very important to make sure that you do exercises, that you do finger mobility exercises as prescribed by your doctor. And I do actually have a video that I can link here of very specific exercises that you can do in your cast. But of course, always make sure that you do get clearance from your doctor before you start any kind of exercise program. I hope you found this video helpful. Do me a favor, and if you did, please give it a like. And also, if you can, don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching.